Welcome, comic book loving friends and fiends, to another grand episode of In the Library of Graphic Literature, and we welcome Wallace Ryan to the stage.
Boo, 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 get out of the way, boo, boo, boo.
You cannot kill a god, Wallace.
Oh yeah, darn.
Unless you're another god.
Yes, that's, yeah, if comics have taught us anything.
Yes.
Yay, thank you. And of course,
Luna.
there's the mysterious Luna. Here, and today's episode is one that you came up with, which is kind of cool because it works with your outfit. Is godly comics.
Yes.
And you're in your goddess outfit here, and it's quite lovely. I love it. It's very sparkly, and as soon as you wore it, was just like, oh, this is so godlike, right? It's just like we got to do. And when you said god comics, it's just like, yeah, perfect.
Yes. We're going to go over all the gods we could find in the comics.
Yeah, the coolest gods of them all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we'll start out then with one who's, I guess, kind of a god in some ways, and in some ways maybe not completely a god. Well, here we go. Da-da-da-da, and it's Galactus. There he is, taking on the Fantastic Four.
Is that so?
And Galactus, of course, now he wasn't like a god per se. He was kind of like a space god, and he came down to Earth to eat Earth, basically.
Mm.
and there's a great picture of him there, and that's him on the cover there too, right?
Oh, okay.
Actually, there's him on the cover, and it was a classic. It was such a classic storyline because it was just like, for the first time ever, you're used to seeing, superhero villains being powerful and all that, but he was all powerful. He was like a god, right? And he had them on the run, and he was definitely one of the coolest villains of them all. And in the end, I don't think I'm giving away in the end. Oh yeah, and the Silver Surfer, of course, was his herald, right? And there he is. That's a great shot of him there. Really cool outfit. And he wasn't really evil. He was just, well, he had to eat to live, right? So he ate planets, right?
Oh,
So, I mean, what are you going to do, right? So, Galactus is our number 10 god. Yay! Space god, I guess. Next up, this...
all kind of space gods.
Yeah. Now, this one here, my number 9 choice is sort of an unusual god per se, but I think of him as, well, he's kind of godlike in some ways, or at least Jesus-like, is Warlock.
That's blasphemous.
Warlock. Now, Warlock, he takes on, actually, what looks to be a god, or he takes on this guy, the Magus, who is basically like and once again, I don't think I'm ruining anything, he's basically like another version of Warlock, but he's formed his own religion. Oh, there's the matriarch, the head of his church, the Church of Universal Truth, I think it was, and he has like these knights, dark knights, who enforce his edicts and the such. And in the end, he is revealed. Oh, there he is there, and he kind of even looks like him, only with that freaky afro, right?
Yeah.
And there he is. So the Magus was kind of like an evil god. And the Warlock, he really always has been sort of a bit of a Christ-like figure. I mean, even that, it's almost like on the crucifix there, right?
Oh, my goodness.
So, and he dies in the end to save Earth for us. And, oh yeah, which is in this one here. But he comes back to take out Thanos.
Sure you're not giving too much away there?
No, because these are from the 80s. I figure most people have read them by now, right? But Warlock, he was, to me, always one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite comics from the 70s. And Jim Starlin, the guy who did it, well, I mean, he created Thanos. He created a lot of cool characters, Gamora, Drax, who've gone on to be in the movies. Now, the latest Guardians of the Galaxy, where they have Warlock in it, it's just like, oh, what a goofy! It's an insult to Warlock. Bleh. It really is, right? makes me kind of sick, right? So he is our number 9 god, and now our number 8 god is really about a god. It's the Book of Genesis, illustrated by Robert Crumb. And basically he's taken the Book of Genesis and he's illustrated it from the start to the end.
Mm.
But it's not quite like people sort of imagine. But I mean, he stays close to it, but he puts his own interpretation on it. The drawing in it is absolutely beautiful. All 50 chapters included, including creation and Eve, the begots, which go on for a few pages. This person begot that person. Jacob, Judah, Joseph and his brothers, Abraham. All the big stars are here. And of course, God himself is in a starring role, right? Now, of course, his son, Jesus, he doesn't come along till long after this. He's in a later chapter, right? Mm. But I love this book. I thought it was, as a matter of fact, I went to when I was living in New York, just before I came home, my brother Jeff had sent me tickets to see Leonard Cohen at not Maple Leaf Gardens, at Madison Square Gardens. And the same night, he was autographing things at a bookstore, actually close to Madison Square Gardens. Him and, I think it was Francois Mouly, the wife of Art Spiegelman, I think was involved. And anyway, so it was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm not going to throw away this ticket because my brother, he went out of his way to get it to me and all that. And so I went up to the bookstore and hung around there waiting. Maybe they'll show up early and hang out a bit. Fat chance of that. Anyway, Genesis, illustrated by Robert Crumb. Very unusual, very a different entry, I guess, for our godly comics. Mm-hmm. Yay! Now, speaking of godly comics, this guy's an ungodly artist. Barry Windsor-Smith. Young Gods. Young Gods, Old Gods, New Gods, like you say. And this, of course, is, Barry Windsor-Smith, as I've said many times, is still one of the greatest artists, I think, in comics still today. He's the one who did all that,
show the picture.
The pre-Raphaelite artwork and all that, the mythical scenes. I showed you a few of the posters, and he absolutely gorgeous. Like, just the art is amazing. He was the one I showed you about Conan the Barbarian. He did the first 20-something issues of Conan the Barbarian. And just absolutely beautifully drawn. You can't get any more beautiful than that, can you?
And as a bonus character we wanted to mention was Lady Bass from The Sandman.
Save him for the honorable mentions.
I couldn't.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Okay. Look at this artwork. Seriously, look. Check that out. Right? it's...
Oh, yeah.
To me, and I've said it many times before, he's one of the most beautiful artists in comics still to this day. But, yep. And it's great action too, but beautifully drawn. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I hope there were a couple other books in this series that I hope to track down, and hopefully we'll get. So, Young Gods, yay! For our number 7. Now, from our number 6, we're going to go back into sort of Warlock type of territory with the Infinity Gauntlet. Because in this one, Thanos becomes godlike, right? Because he gets the Infinity Gems or the Soul Gems, as they're actually called in this, and he becomes omnipotent. He becomes godlike. Oh, there's some, and this beautifully drawn by the late George Perez, and of course written by Jim Starlin, the guy who wrote the Warlock. Mm. But beautifully done. And this, as a matter of fact, this has the famous scene where, remember where he steps forward, he just snaps his fingers and everyone wipes out half the universe? Mm. And that's in the movie, and this is where it first appears. Now this actually came from I got the Infinity Gauntlet box set, which is a huge thing that has a lot of the lead-ins and then all the sequels to this. But this to me is still the best, right? Beautifully drawn, and I don't know if I should spoil the ending, but I think most people know in the end that Thanos does not prevail. Thanos never prevails, right? It's like he wants to lose, right? He doesn't want to be a god, right? he can't handle being a god, right? Okay. Are you loving it so far?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that because usually when we try to do honorable mentions, you completely forget
I
them.
know. That's
and we
true
never
too.
mention them.
That's true. Now we will remember them this week. Honorable mentions. Okay. Speaking of honorable mentions, or just honorable, Ragnarok. No. By Walt Simonson, and this is of course based on the Norse myths, and this is Thor. This because Thor is basically public domain, so I mean you might have the Mighty Thor, but this was sort of a different version of Thor. He's Thor missing his lower jaw.
I see.
But he has his hammer, and he sets out on a quest because he can't find Odin and all his friends and all that. But it was beautifully drawn. I love this series. Well, Walt Simonson is one of my favorite artists, and so this is a whole new Thor in a lot of ways, right? And he's not like the Thor we're used to in the movies and the other comics. This guy is a bit of a rough case, right? But beautifully drawn.
Looks undead.
Yeah, he really does, doesn't he? Right? But it was surprisingly
Lord of the Dead. That makes sense.
Yeah, but surprisingly it was, and this is why it's so high up. I mean, it's number 5 in my list, so it's pretty high up there in terms of a godlike thing. Now I was going to throw in the what was it, Norse mythology, but I decided, well, I got Ragnarok and that, so I was going to throw that in one of the honorable mentions. But of course I mentioned it now, right now, out of context, right? So Ragnarok, number 5. Number 4, and not to be confused with that sad movie of the same name, The Eternals. Da-da-da-da-da. This is...
Are you sure that's not book number 6?
Yeah. No, we're going backwards, so this is book, we're going down from 10 to 1, right?
Oh.
Now this is the book, The Eternals, that the movie is based on, and the movie actually was kind of like... I don't know. I love the... If they had actually stuck to that and even kept some of the costumes, or even just stuck to this story. The movie, it was just painful to watch. As a matter of fact, I never did finish it. And I love the Eternals. When I was a kid, this would have been out in '76, so I was 15 when I first read that. And it was kind of based on this book that was out at the time. What was it? Chariots of the Gods. And it was this book that came out saying, that humans came from UFOs and all that during the 70s. And of course, this was before the internet, and it took a while, but eventually, it was all destroyed. The idea, the concept. But he took the concept and he went with it. Look, even Chariots of the Gods, more fantastic than Chariots of the Gods. And this is where the space gods now land. Now you have the Eternals, and they're kind of like gods on Earth, but these are the gods that created them. And check out that spaceship.
Looks like a fish.
It's weird, isn't it? It is cool. But even better still is the gods themselves, who you get to see towards the end of that episode, if I can get it. And all the gods were really cool. They were... I think I might have even gone right past it here. Oh yeah, I have. All the gods. It's here we go. The pages just never. This is one of the space gods, the Celestials they call them.
Looks like a robot, man.
Yeah, well, you don't see any of the faces of any of the Celestials, right? The space gods. They're just these mysterious beings. They never talk. And I mean, they all look really strange, very bizarre costumes. Well, costumes are, I guess costumes you could say, right? But they all look. Oh, here we go. There's a bunch of them stand together, looking up at the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, actually, is one of my favorite episode is one called The Astronauts. Oh, here it is. As a matter of fact, the Russians, or the Soviet Union as it is back then, when they see the Celestials, they fire a nuclear missile at it. And the god turns and he sees it, and he just... And the missile turns around and starts to come back at the Russians. And they're watching it as it comes closer and closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
But in the end, then it switches. The last panel shows them all dead in the control room from fright. In fact, the missile hadn't even left the silo. The gods are that good, right? And they just fooled them into thinking that the missile was on the way. But that last panel, well, everyone just and it was, even as a kid, it was just like, oh my god, oh wow, okay, and that's pretty cool. Well, and Carcass, the big red thing there. But I mean, overall, it was just a wildly imaginative comic, like everything that Kirby does. Oh no, this is the astronauts one. This is the other one wasn't the astronauts. This one was. Oh, check out that. Kirby was the king of cool machines, right? But yeah, Eternals still one of in my book one of the best gods out there in comics. So check it out. And Neil Gaiman, as a matter of fact, wrote a lot of people when they try to follow Kirby. You know, the efforts when they take one of his creations and try to do it, it never worked. But Gaiman actually did an amazing, I think it was a 12-issue series of the Eternals. And he kept it true to Kirby, but he made it was his own story, and it was cool, right? So now we're down to number 3. And with number 3 comes, speaking of young gods, we're back to young gods again. The Forever People. I even had this comic when I was a kid, and it was in perfect shape. Now, of course, this is from the Fourth World, DC's Fourth World, where there's new gods, old gods, all kinds of evil gods. And these are like the young gods. They're from New Genesis. There's the whole bunch of them coming out of the boom tube. And there we go. And I loved it. I love the entire Fourth World, but they were cool because it was just like, these were hippie gods, I guess is the best way you could say it. And they all looked very cool. And Vulcan the Black, who was one of the first major black heroes that I can think in DC Comics now that I think outside of Stewart, John Stewart, the guy who was the Green Lantern. But yeah, it was, and they're on Earth hunting for Beautiful Dreamer, who's one of them. Oh, and there's Darkseid. Speaking of gods, he's an evil god. Did you know? As a matter of fact, but and they basically rescue her from Darkseid, and Superman decides to try one of the boom tubes to head to New Genesis, but he gets doubtful, and of course, then the boom tube fades, and he's thrown back on Earth to fight another day. Oh, cool, hey? I love these collages that he did. Very, very revolutionary here. Oh, and here's the Forever People once again. And with one of my favorite splash pages of all time. So they are, without doubt, and I have no problem putting them as number 3 in terms of gods, because they were like the hip, cool gods. You had the older gods and people like that, but they were the hip, cool gods. Now, number 2, speaking of old gods, once again we come back to Thor with the Mighty Thor this time. Yay! Now, I don't know why, but when I first started reading Marvel Comics and all that, I really liked Thor for some reason. He just seemed like a really cool superhero. And I had just about all the Thors up to the 1980s, except for maybe 7 or 8. So I had all these, including the first appearance of Thor. But he was the whole comic was wildly imaginative, and I think that it has more to do with Kirby than Stan Lee, because you see echoes of the old gods and Thor in the Fourth World, in the Forever People and all that type of stuff. But this of course is based on all the. I mean, he based it directly on Thor from the Norse myths. I mean, they changed a few things. Oh, look, the boyhood of Loki. So we see Loki here as a young little whippersnapper.
Angsty teenager.
Yeah, and he's adopted too, so of course you can imagine that's sort of made him, and he's always jealous of Thor, who's like the golden boy, literally, right? But I mean, I picked up all these when I was buying these comics for like $3 and $4 a piece in the 70s, and I mean now they were 20, 30, even more. But one of my all-time favorites, and he started to get more and more cosmic and more and more unlike a lot of the other gods. He got out into space, and he actually ends up fighting Galactus, who we've seen from our number 10. Oh, and Hercules. Fights Hercules, who ends up being an Avenger himself, funny enough. But yeah, Thor, I love Thor. I always thought it was cool, all these cool, Sif, Odin. They were all great, right? So, throw that onto the stack. Now, before we go to number 1, how about we do the honorable mentions now? Now, I don't have a stack for them.
I have a picture.
But, oh yeah, there you have your picture of
Lady Bast.
Lady Bast. Definitely in there. Hercules Unbound. Not that Hercules from Marvel, but DC's Hercules. There was a series from the 70s that Walt Simonson, who did Ragnarok, did, and it was cool. Who else? Promethea, which I think is behind me somewhere here in one of the Absolute Editions, those beautiful books. Who else? Godland from Image, which is pretty good. Doctor Strange. Now, of course, he's not a god, but he's involved with this being called Eternity and all these other god-like beings. Dormammu, who's like a evil god from another dimension and all that. So, I didn't throw him in the main one, but I had to throw him in the honorable mentions, right? Who else? Oh, yeah, and then the rest of the...
Endless?
No. Well, the Endless... I don't know if they're gods as such. I guess we could throw them in. They are kind of like gods, yeah. Okay, we'll throw in the Endless. And last but not least, Mr. Miracle and Jimmy Olsen, who are from the Fourth World and are involved with gods. Now, Jimmy Olsen himself is not a god, but they're in Jimmy Olsen, as opposed to all the other ones, he's fighting the evil gods. They even have their headquarters on Earth. It's called the Evil Factory, right? Mm-hmm. Which I thought was such a cool name back then. They were fighting the Superman and the good guys who were at this DNA project, it was called. Which in the early 70s, the fact that they even used those letters, I mean, people didn't even know what DNA was back then. And he talked about clones, there's clones throughout it and all that. Talk about it. This Kirby guy, he was ahead of his time, right? Mm-hmm. Even more ahead than me, if that's possible. Is it possible?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, so that's pretty good. Now we're down to our number 1. Dun, 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 dun. And our number 1, and I kept the book aside, our number 1 god for me is the New Gods. Dun, 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 dun. There's Orion, which is kind of cool. Orion, he's the major New God, or he's the star of the New God comic itself. And as a kid, I loved the New Gods. I mean, look at this, even the outfit that he's wearing, that machine that he flies around on. When I first seen this, it was just like, wow, what is this? What is this guy? He just so unusual, and it just starts with the top. And this is, a lot of people think this is an homage to the Mighty Thor, because I mean, there's even people with winged helmets and stuff like that, and it basically talks about, and this is like Ragnarok, the end of the world, and the basically Asgard gets split into, it doesn't say Asgard, but whatever planet. The war is so great it splits into 2 and ends up with New Genesis and Apocalypse, the good and the bad. And then from that came the new light, which is Orion. Da-da-da-da. I always liked him, and Harry is flying in, and his pal Light Ray comes along.
He was birthed out of a planet exploding?
What's that?
He was birthed out of a planet
No. The planet when the planet reformed and formed New Genesis, and then, eventually out of the mists of time, I guess, comes him. And it's present day where they're on New Genesis. I mean, I love this. Like, look at the huge statue there in the background. But, I mean, like I say, this thing that he was wearing, the Astro Harness, it's called. Metron, one of the other New Gods, and there's Highfather, who's like he's like the Odin of the New Gods, right? Then of course we come over to Dark Side, who was more like the Loki of the new gods, right? He's totally evil. He's super evil, right? You can't get any more evil than Dark Side. There he is. Look. And Dark Side is seeking the anti-life equation, some sort of fancy thing where he can control all people with just a word. I always like this picture of him. Very, very dramatic, right?
I'm sure there'd be someone out there being like, I can fix him.
Yeah, I can fix him. I can make Dark Side nice.
There's a bit of good left in there.
Somewhere in there. And I have 3 editions of that because I got the Fourth World up there, right there, and I do have the Fourth World again in the Absolute editions, the big ones up there. Had to do it though because the Absolute editions just look beautiful. But like I say, the whole Fourth World series, it's all about the gods, right? Oh, and here's one of the evil gods who was always one of my favorite, Granny Goodness. I mean, to have a Granny as a villain, even as a kid, it was just like, I can't dig this. I can't see my nan, running a savage orphanage filled with soldiers and people, and training them how to kill and stuff like that. But she was unlike any character I'd ever seen before. A grandmother who was evil.
Make sure you show her this time.
Yeah,
You didn't show her last time.
I mean, who thinks of characters like this? Well, obviously, the King did. Jack King Kirby, he did. It's still one of my favorite versions. But this is one of, I bought this when I was living in New York, and I reread it all the time. I mean, I reread them when I was a kid. Now, as a kid too, I did manage to complete a collection of the entire series. It took about 10 years, and it was funny because I thought I had a complete collection. And I was in New York, and I was in Forbidden Planet, and it's across the street from where they are now, but I was downstairs where they had all their back issues, and I'm going through it one day, and looking through the Forever People, and I pull up this one issue, and I'm like, where the heck did this come from? And I pulled out my wallet and pulled out my little paper of books that I'm looking for, and it was the last one there, and it was just like, yay! Dad stopped up to the cash register and looking quite the fool. And funny enough, I sold them all in the end, the complete set, to Jason, because I said to him at the time, and this was before that book came out. He said, "Why are you selling your Fourth World collection? Don't you love this?" I said, "Yeah, but they're going to come out with it in a really nice hardcover," because they were starting to do that at the time, and sure enough, they did about a year later. It's just like, and I didn't just stop there. I got a couple of editions. Oh, as a matter of fact, speaking of gods, I have the Thor pin. As a matter of fact, let me get up close there. See it? There's the Thor pin. It's one of my favorite pins, actually. Big Thor fan. Can't get any bigger. So that's
Well, we do have a cat named Loki.
Yes, our cat is named Loki. So there's the place is filled with godly stuff. Godliness. I love the concept though. It was a good idea. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And now next week we'll be doing, we're not going to say, are we? We're not going to tell them, are we?
Because you don't even know.
No. Yeah, it's because I don't know either. But we will be doing something. Actually, I might even have 1 or 2 new books. Who knows? If not, we're going to have some cool list or something to chat about, aren't we?
Yeah.
I figured.